So hello YouTube, this is WF7I Homebrew, and I'm here today to go over kind of the final finishing touches that I made on my little radio project here. So I didn't give this guy a name, but it's the tri-band, 3-band radio that I've been working on for the last 3 or 4 months, I guess. So here it is in all its glory. So I painted it red, and I like to paint radios different colors. They come stock, usually gray or white sometimes, gray or black usually, and I just find that to be kind of boring and dull. So I went ahead and painted it, and I can plug it in here for you to see what the display looks like. Again, the display is a frequency counter from QRP guys. And that's what that guy looks like. Looks pretty nice, I think. I'm really happy with how it came out, and it functions quite well. So I just thought it might be fun to sort of detail a couple things with this radio as far as the final touches are concerned. So if anyone is new to building projects and things like that, one of the things that's nice is to be able to label what these different knobs do. There's a lot of different ways to go about that, and I'm not necessarily the expert in all the best ways. I can tell you that right now, but most of what I've learned is through just trial and error and some things that I've done. So this one, I decided to use the transfer numbers. So what that is you can get these sheets. It's kind of like this. And this one is many years old, and I don't remember what the brand of it is. You can find them online, but they're just letters and numbers in these sheets. And what it is you just cut out the letters that you want to transfer over, and you put those over the surface here, and you just rub with like maybe a screwdriver, like a blade screwdriver or something flat, and it'll transfer the letter over onto the display. So that worked really well, and that's what I did for these letters. Now there is some issues with it. If you look really closely, I mean, some of the letters don't line up perfectly. They're not, spacing is not ideal, that kind of thing. If I was going to enter this into some sort of competition, I probably wouldn't use these necessarily, but it gets the job done, and it's pretty clear, and it looks kind of professional. Depends on how much time you spend trying to get everything lined up perfectly, but it will work. And then for the painting, all I did is just got some spray paint. I mean, there's nothing special there. I had, in the course of working on this project, I had gotten some scuff marks on the top, so I got some black spray painted this black, so it's a darker black color now. And I just got some spray paint for, just generic spray paint. That's suitable for metal or all surfaces, I think, and spray painted this. So I take the knobs off. Obviously, I put some tape to cover the display up so that wouldn't get impacted, and took the switch off and the headphone jack and everything. So it was just the panel here, and just spray painted that. Spray painted the back, same deal. I just taped off the SO239 RF connector because that's too much of a bother to take that off, really. So just put some tape over that, took the knob off the RF gain control, and took the power control off. So you can see, up close, I've got some labeling on there. I've got the RF gain and what do I call it, power. Maybe I didn't label power. Yeah, I did. It said 12 volts. So you can see above the little metal port there. It's a type M connector, M like Mike. Those are pretty common little DC connectors. And so that's it for that. A couple other finer points. What I do, and actually a tech guy taught me this years ago. I used to work in an electronics shop and did a lot of his own radios. Is there's a thing called crystal clear. It may go by different names, but it's a clear coating paint kind of thing. It's transparent, and you put these letters on and you spray that over the top of the letters. So that way, when you're operating the radio and you move your finger around, you don't move the letter off, because these letters aren't really held on very well. It's almost like static electricity, basically. They're not really stuck on that well, so you need to have some type of a coating to keep them on there, and that's a perfect way to go about that. Now, a couple of other things I've done in the past, and again, some of you may have some better ideas actually. I know there's at least two other methods. There's a transfer paper you can buy for the laser printer that you can use to transfer circuit patterns to circuit boards. That same type of paper you can also use to transfer letters to this. And the advantage of that is, of course, you can print off really nice labels on the laser printer and make them as fancy as you want. You could probably put artwork on there of all kinds. Print it off in the transfer paper, and then you have to apply heat to transfer it to this, something like a clothes iron, like what you'd use to iron your clothes with. And there's YouTube videos on how to do that you can look up. But I've done that kind of thing before with circuit pattern transfers, and that works pretty well. And I think a similar method would probably work pretty good here. And again, you'd probably want to put a clear coat or something on top of it to keep the letters on there. Another way to go is to, you can just print off onto adhesive, kind of transparent adhesive plastic, where you kind of, it has like a backing that you peel off and it just sticks on there. I did that for another radio, which I don't want to pan over there right now because it would probably be too hard to show, but and that works okay. But I mean, you can see the border of the little plastic label basically, and I didn't really like that. It doesn't show up a lot, but it does show up, and so I decided I wanted to do this method instead. There's a couple of other ways I wanted to investigate doing, like with model airplanes and stuff, they have these transfers that you kind of dip in water and you just put them on there and pull them off. And I think you can print, I think there's a way to print a pattern onto that type of paper too. I might be wrong there, but I think there is. Anyway, there's different ways to go about this. Of course, you can always use a label maker. I mean, that's pretty cheesy, but in a pinch you could do that. I do like to have labels though. When years go by, sometimes you don't really know what the radio even does, or if it even is a radio. You get a lot of projects floating around your shack after a while, and sometimes you kind of scratch your head like, I'm not sure what that thing even was. So it's kind of nice. So I did another vlog explaining the circuit in more detail. A couple things I want to say about that. I'm also going to do a blog to kind of flesh out a few more details. But if you're somebody that's brand new to building any kind of radio circuit, or maybe brand new to circuits in general, this might be kind of a tough one to take on initially. And I don't think I would take on a tri-band version. I'd probably do a single band. That's what I started out with 20 years ago when I did something like this. So you could definitely modify this circuit and just do one of the three bands. That would be much simpler, much less parts, much less issue with. This has a multi-band switch, and one of the problems I ran into with this, as you might imagine, is you have a lot of RF connections to the switch back and forth between like the oscillator and the mixer chip, and I think that sometimes it seemed like I was getting some unintended kind of mixing going on with signals injecting into the mixer that I didn't want because they were kind of bleeding over from the jumpers and stuff. So I ended up using some insulated connections in some areas, so basically like this really thin coax, and I forget the designator on it. It's really, I want to say 213, but I think that's wrong. It's this kind of stuff. It's kind of salmon colored. I don't know if it shows up very well in this. It's kind of this salmonish pink kind of color stuff. Very thin coax. And I keep that around for projects. But it's tedious to use that a lot, and it's it's not super expensive, but it can add up if you do a lot of jumpers like that. So if you do a single band version, you don't really have near as many jumpers. You can keep all the connections pretty tight in there, and it's just a lot less to keep track of. and so I would probably definitely do that. But in general, this is a pretty simple circuit. Um, One of the things that I mentioned in the other video is I'd like to add a volume control, because right now this is the volume control, is your RF gain knob here, and that's it. So the LM386 amp, you can look in the data sheet. I mean, there's a variation that has a volume control essentially. You can vary the gain. So I'm going to look into that. And what I'd like to do is just replace this front toggle switch. This is the power switch here. Replace that with a volume control knob that kind of clicks, and that click turns the power on and off at the bottom, just like a traditional volume knob if you've seen older radios with the volume knob. So I think I'm going to look into that later. Other than that, though, I think for the most part I'm good with this radio. I think it's a good little radio. I was really happy with its performance when it was finally all said and done. I had a lot of struggles with out-of-band noise, and there's still a little bit of that gets into the radio at night when the signals get really strong on shortwave. But having a metal box, having this all sealed up at the end and shielded and everything, that helped to kind of control that, it seems. Just kind of keeping the wire length shorter in some aspects of the circuit, sort of between the audio amplifier and the mixer, and between the various local oscillators in the mixer, trying to kind of keep that tight helped with some of that noise issue, I think. It seems to work pretty well now, and I enjoy using it. The audio is a little bit harsh. I made reference to that in the other video. If you wanted to have this as a radio that you use regularly for kind of long-term listening, and it's not just a novelty item that you say, hey, I built this. If you actually want to use this regularly, I would definitely want to improve the audio a little bit, and I'm sure there's stuff on the internet out there for improving this type of radio audio. But the goal for this really was to try to keep it simple, at least initially. You can just keep building and adding on to these things forever, and at some stage it may not be worth the investment and extra time and labor on this particular radio design to make it so much more better. It might be better off kind of redesigning, using a different kind of chip or different methodology to kind of have a better quality radio if you want to put in a lot of extra effort. For instance, one of the things I wanted to do is I really want an S meter on this radio, at least an external S meter, and I have one. I picked up one of these guys, and I found this on eBay. I've seen some other guys on YouTube using these, and it's a Yaesu external meter. It's just a nice little external meter. It's got a little connector there. So I thought what I would do is put a port on the back of this thing for the meter, and you can make an audio-based AGC, automatic gain control. I thought I would try to put that together with it. So those are the two mods, I think, and I'll probably stop there. But the audio AGC, I think, might be kind of a fun thing. It'd be fun to have an S meter, really. I think that's pretty awesome to have an S meter on a radio. I like the needle. I don't like having digits and stuff. I really want to have that analog needle. So those are probably the two things I'd say: improve the audio, put in a volume control, and maybe put in that option for an external meter. It will make it a little bit more complicated, but I think it'll make it something then that I could sort of use and be more fun to use and kind of use it more often, I guess, as opposed to, like I said, just a novelty kind of thing. So that's pretty much, I think that's going to conclude the videos on this radio. I'm going to put a link again to the blog where I go into maybe a little bit more technical description, but I think between this video, the last video, and the blog, really, I've said pretty much all I can say about this radio. And there's some band scans that I did. I just want to say, it's a really fun, it was a really very gratifying experience for me to build this, because for years I have always wanted to add a digital display of some sort to my radio projects. And having the frequency counter, the little QRP guys circuit, was a great way to do that, very inexpensive, and it really makes it a lot more fun to use, honestly. I mean, not having a digital display for me is just, just kind of, at least in today's world in 2020, just seems not really that great. I really enjoy having that. And I also, I come from a time when I first got started in the radio hobby in the mid 80s, or early 80s really. I mean, digital displays on radios were still pretty hard to get. I mean, it's kind of more expensive radios to have that feature. So there's kind of a nostalgic, I don't know how to say it, kind of a thing where, to be able to build that myself, put that into a design I made myself is really gratifying. I think it's hard to explain, but just tuning the bands with a store-bought radio, you don't really get that same feeling. Like when you build it yourself, you know all the quirks, you know why it's behaving the way it is. You've got features you put in there that you wanted for yourself. Even just the layout of the knobs, like everything, the color. I mean, it's all what I wanted to do. And I think that's maybe the parting message with this, whether it's a radio like this, whether it's, I don't know, any other type of circuit you want to make, project you want to make, make it your own and put in features that you really like, that you really want, and use it as a learning vehicle to figure out things. There's a lot of things I'm going to talk about on the blog that I found in the course of working on this that I still don't quite understand, and it's a learning thing for me to kind of go through that. So there's just so many aspects to building a little radio like this that I think are just amazing, and the more you can sort of go out on your own and sort of make your own circuits is the better. I mean, when you get to the point where you can sort of tweak and add things, even if it's somebody else's circuit, if you're adding it on and making, adding it as part of an overall project that you're doing, it makes it your own. It's really kind of your own design at that point, as opposed to building kits. Building kits is great, but at the end of the day, it's still kind of like you're following the procedures and you're just, kind of doing somebody else's design. The moment you can sort of expand on that and pull in different things to make it your own, that's when it's really, really incredibly gratifying, I think. And I definitely encourage anyone who wants to do this kind of thing to get started. I can certainly answer questions. If you have some basic questions about setting up a bench or about different techniques to build the circuit, there's a lot of things I don't really cover here. I'm not really sure how many people are interested in that yet, at least. I do have about 95 subscribers, which is great, thank you. I'm hoping to get to the 100 barrier here pretty soon, but I'm not an internet sensation by any means. I'm not sure I want to be, but I'm not. But eventually, as people watch these, if you have questions, leave a comment below, and I'll do the best I can to answer that. I think that's about it for now. Hope you guys stay safe out there and enjoy working on these projects. 73.